Management Commission to order. It is our 161st meeting, which is amazing. A lot of people before me have done great things with our meetings. So we are have a pretty full agenda today, and I'm 3 hours ahead of you. So it is 4 o'clock on the East Coast. And the grandchildren get home about 5. So, and then it gets kind of pandemonium. So we'll try to get through our agenda. And I know some of you have to leave early. So let's make some introductions. I would like to make sure we have a quorum. So let's see if we could have, I think Chris Wall, are you with us?
I'm present.
All right. Oh, yeah. And I should say I'm Vicki Walker. I am the chair of the Management Commission and the director of the Department of State Lands. Chief Brainerd, are you with us? I see you have an iPhone. Can you unmute and announce that you're with us, Chief? All right, I'll come back to Chief. He's going to figure out how to unmute himself. Trent Hatfield.
I'm here, present, just trying to put together a little lunch because I was driving during my lunchtime. So.
Okay, all right. Bob Cowan.
I'm present.
Good. John Burns.
Present.
Good. Let me get this right. Maya Watts.
Maya Watts.
Yeah, I did it right
Present.
the first time. Yay. Okay, who else am I missing? Let me go back to the chief. Chief, can you log in? Okay, well, I see his iPhone here. John Sweet. Hi.
Hi, Vicki.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good. This is your first meeting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have you. So I think that is all the commission members. Am I correct? All right, then we'll go through and announce who everyone else is who's on the line, and then we'll get started. So I've got right in the middle of my screen on the top is Ed. Ed, announce yourself.
Yeah, Ed Oswald, IT for the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve.
Thank you. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy, Administrative Assistant, staff.
Thank you. Bree.
Good afternoon. I'm Bree Yednock, Reserve Manager at the South Slough Reserve.
Jamie.
Hello, I'm Jamie Bellinger, the Education Coordinator at the South Slough Reserve.
Awesome. Eric.
Hi, everyone. My name's Eric Dean. I'm the Education Specialist at the South Slough Reserve.
Nice to see you. Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice Yates. I'm the Stewardship Coordinator at the South Slough Reserve.
Adam.
Hi, I'm the Research Technician down at the Science Lab.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Todd.
Hi, everybody. Todd Buchholz, Vice Chair and Treasurer, friend of the South Slough.
And my daughter's bird, Sky, really liked your voice. So there you go. Christine.
Hi, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. President of Friends of South Slough.
All right. I've got to go up and around. People kind of move around. So Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Schmidt. I'm the Watershed Monitoring Coordinator at the South Slough Reserve down at the Science Lab.
Awesome. Thank you. Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Schooler. I'm the lead scientist at the Reserve.
Allie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Allie, the Estuarine Monitoring Coordinator at the South Slough Science Lab.
Great. And it looks like that's South Slough in your background. Rebecca.
Afternoon, all. Rebecca Muse, Operations Manager at the Reserve.
Thank you. Deborah.
Sorry, I had to have trouble unmuting. I'm Deborah Rudd, the Public Involvement Coordinator at the South Slough Reserve.
Great. Oh, and I love Mall Man. That's Mike.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Allman, the Maintenance Foreman for South Slough Reserve.
All right. And Sabra.
Sabra Comet, Coastal Training Program Coordinator at South Slough.
Great. Did I miss anyone? I hope not, but if I did, speak up. Okay, terrific. We have done our introductions. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. The first thing on our agenda is to review and approve the minutes of our last meeting from December 7, 2021. And I have to tell you, Kathy does a tremendous job putting the minutes and the packet together. I took it to bed last night as my nighttime reading, and it was exciting. I didn't fall asleep. It was great. So I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from the December 7, 2021 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Maya. Is there a second? Trent has a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Boom, so accepted. Thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is any public input. Bree, I don't see anyone on the line for public input today.
No, Kathy did not receive any emails or phone calls, so nobody for that category.
All right, well, maybe we'll have someone when we come down in our next trip. That's July, right? Yes. We're also trying to have a land board meeting in August at the South Slough. So you might get to see me twice, and that'll be fun to come down. We tried to do that last August. And then, of course, the pandemic came, and then the pandemic continued and continued. So we're really hoping that we can make that happen. All right, old business. We have one item, and then there was another item that you'll talk about later. Correct, Bree?
Yes, yeah. There was an item about the hunting policy, and I'll cover that in the other section because I just have a real brief update for that. So
okay, great. So we have one item under old business.
Yes. So this is the land acquisition update. And I just wanted to provide a brief update on our progress towards purchasing the 0.56 acre parcel at the entrance to the visitor center. If you'll recall, the commissioner approved the purchase of this privately owned parcel on November 15th in 2019. So we've been working through a very extended process to purchase the property since that time. I'm very pleased to report that in January of this year, the Department of State Lands signed a purchase and sale agreement with the owner, and DSL will be taking this topic to the land board at their April meeting to request final approval to purchase the property. So we are in the final stages, which is great news. And I also wanted to note that we are incredibly grateful to the Friends of South Slough, who are generously providing the $40,000 that we need to purchase the property. So grateful and thankful for that. And that is all I have for the update, unless there are questions.
Okay, yes, I'm especially excited that FOSS has been able to raise the funds necessary to make this happen. We really appreciate their contribution in that regard. And we've been at this one for a long while, and I'm glad to finally bring it to fruition, and I'll be presenting it to the land board next month on April 12th. So for approval, I don't expect them not to approve it, but they do need to approve it. So any other questions or comments about this item? All right, thank you. Thank you, Bree. We'll go on to new business. We have some action items here. And so our new voting members, it's going to be great for you to have an opportunity to cast your vote on these things. The first one is a biennial review of our fees, which I found really fascinating reading last night. And I just want to tell you, Bree, I appreciated the charts in there and the work that you all did to check around to see what the fees were similarly situated in other rental locations. So I'll let you take charge of that issue and talk to us about it.
Okay, well, actually, all the credit goes to Rebecca Muse for that. So
and of course, I should have known that.
And she'll be sharing that report. So
all right, thank you.
Okay, your fee schedule report starts on page 9 of your packet. And this is a process that we go through every 2 years, and we report on our earnings as well as any fees or any utility costs, things like that, that we have around those facilities. And when it comes to our fee schedule, it covers our housing income, our auditorium rentals, any type of permit fees we might receive, things like that. And I think the last 2 years, it's kind of a uneventful report, but because we weren't open to the public for the majority of the time. So for just about the first 3 months of the last 2 years of reporting, so we're looking at all of 2020 and all of 2021, we only had income for January, February, and part of March of 2020. So as you can see on page 10, the income generated from Spruce Ranch was only $750. And that is due to the closure of our facilities to the public because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you can also see, our utility costs continue, even though we don't have any income coming in. And especially out at Spruce Ranch, we have upgraded all of the HVAC systems in those units, so they stay a consistent temperature no matter what, whether people are there or not. So that those costs continue. So we did have a loss, especially from Spruce Ranch over the last 2 years. And then we also have income coming in from our auditorium, and that was also very limited because of our closures. Same time frame that we received some income would be January through part of March of 2020. The rest of the time we were closed. So our report is kind of uneventful around because of that closure. So what our recommendations for our fee schedule for 2022 is that we recommend the commission maintain the existing fee schedule. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, income was limited since the reserve was closed to the public for most of 2020 as well as 2021. And the existing fees are still comparable to the local rentals in the area that we check on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I did notice when I was looking in the charts that the Coos Art Museum charges quite a bit more. But they're also in town. So it's less travel for people. But I don't think people know how beautiful it is at South Slough. But given it was the pandemic and people are still recovering, I think your recommendation is a good one. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say about this report?
So John Burns here.
Yeah, hi, John.
Since I'm fairly new, I do have a question, and Rebecca, hopefully you can help me. In regards particularly to the housing and yurts, are those facilities primarily made available to individuals who are either working directly for the slough or people who are coming in to do research, or are they open to the general public?
Yeah, so our housing is primarily available for interns and visiting researchers, but we do make it available to our partners. So for example, we've had OSU Extension people come and stay. We've also had some BLM interns come and stay, and they pay the fees when they're here. One of the things that we did prior to the pandemic, BLM, especially our Loon Lake location, they had their housing up there closed for an extended period of time because they had some damage to their facilities. And they actually came and stayed at Spruce Ranch during that time, and they paid our fees. But we try and not open up to general public, but more to first priority is our interns and visiting researchers, and then our partners after that.
Okay, that makes absolute sense. And the reason I asked the question is because at our Charleston Marina complex, we do have yurts that we rent to the general public, and we do our research on an annual basis. And I saw the rates for yurts, and it's a good deal because our research has them coming in at about $60 a night for other venues. But of course, that's open to the general public, and the South Slough wants to get researchers and other people there where they can do their work and do it in a fashion that is compatible with them doing that and being able to afford it. I understand.
Right. And another note to that. So our yurts, as well as our house, is shared housing. So when you rent the yurt, you could possibly be renting the yurt with up to another 7 people. We have a total of 7 to 8 beds, depending on which yurt you're in. So it's not like you have the yurt all to yourself. So you're sharing housing, which is why our rates are also reduced, because you're not, the only person in the yurt.
So do you have a surcharge for SSNERRs?
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Yep, that's a pretty good one, John. And next time I have people introduce themselves, I should probably, it would be nice if you mention who you're with for our listening audience. And John, you're with the Port of Coos Bay, correct?
That is correct. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Port of Coos Bay.
There you go. Thank you. And that was a great question. Any other questions? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to accept the staff recommendation to maintain the existing fee schedule for 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Robert, thank you. Can I have a second? Maya? All right,
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that motion passes. And I'm getting a notice on my computer that my internet's unstable. So at some point I might have to take myself off video. But let's see where we're at now. Our next action item is approval of federal funding proposals. And this was pretty exciting. There is money available. And we'd like to have some of it. So Bree, why don't you talk about that? But I see Chris has her hand up.
Yes, forgive me for interrupting. For those of you that don't know me, Chris Wall with NOAA's Office for Coastal Management. I am a non-voting member of the commission. And while I note that I am non-voting, I also have to note that I have a role in administering this funding program that's going to be discussed next. So I think the record here should probably note that I'm going to recuse myself from any substantive discussion here. I'll probably just go black for the sake of that, and will not engage in any substantive discussion. But if there are questions on the program itself, the funding program, and anything that come up, Bree, feel free to call on me and I can speak to what I can. A lot of it's still in the works, but is that okay? Are there any other concerns with how I should further recuse myself? Or
no, I think that's great. And thank you for that explanation, Chris. And when I used to serve in the legislature, I used to call this kind of money pixie dust from the federal government, because I used to call it free money, and I got in trouble for that from my co-chairs of Ways and Means. So I started calling it pixie dust because it's a wonderful opportunity to access funding that the federal government has deemed appropriate to send our way. So let's try to take advantage of it. All right, Bree, take it away.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so the figures are front and center while I'm talking about these projects. Are you all seeing the maps in front of you? Great. Okay. So this action agenda item is related to protecting and restoring upland forests and lowland habitats in the South Slough watershed. And the issue at hand is whether the Management Commission should authorize South Slough Reserve staff to apply for federal funding available to the National Estuarine Research Reserve System through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for land acquisition and for habitat restoration projects. So your packet in the agenda item shows the authorities for the commission to undertake this decision. And the summary I'll just briefly go through. The Infrastructure and Investment in Jobs Act, or IIJA, was passed by Congress last year, and it provides $77 million for the National Estuarine Research Reserve System to be administered through NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The funding will be administered over the next 5 years to the reserves through non-competitive capacity building funds, as well as through annual competitive grants. The funds can be used for acquisition, conservation, and habitat restoration projects, including planning and engineering and design. Projects must take place on public land within a reserve boundary or a targeted watershed, and they should allow for public access if possible. Funding will also support on-the-ground projects for up to 3 years. So each reserve in the system, and there are 30 of them now because Connecticut was just designated in January, each reserve can submit up to 3 letters of intent in the first competitive grant cycle. And I wrote in the summary, we expected this to begin in April, and most recent information is we actually don't know when it'll begin. So it may be several months. So we're planning ahead. The South Slough Reserve is requesting permission or an approval from the commission to submit 2 letters of intent and subsequent grant proposals for the following 2 projects. So the first project, which you've heard a lot about in previous meetings, is the restoration of the Lawson Creek watershed. The location of this is shown in figure 1 on the left side of your screen. So that's showing the greater Coos estuary, and then the brown line is the watershed of South Slough Reserve. The green area is the reserve, and then the orange highlighted area is the project area. This is a 530-acre area in the southwestern portion of the reserve. It contains about 500 acres of forested area, 376 acres of which will be targeted for restoration through this project. It also includes 30 acres of lowlands that will be included for restoration. Just to remind you all, before these lands were acquired by the reserve, the forests were logged and the floodplains were converted to, were drained and converted for agriculture. In the uplands, replanting of trees at high densities without any subsequent thinning has resulted in really dense stands of trees. And in the lowlands, diverting the stream to the side ditches has resulted in loss of native wetlands and poor habitat. So, as you know, initial restoration plans were developed back in 2018, and the upland plans portion was approved by the commission in April last year. The remainder of the plan is currently under revision for by the technical advisory team working on the project. And we expect to bring this to the commission, to all of you, in July for a final approval. Partial funding for this project has already been approved by the commission. And with the help of Friends of South Slough, we've received $64,000 from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and begun some of this work already. We're in the early stages of contracting for that work. We are also partnering with the Coos Watershed Association, who received $5,000 from the Coquel Tribal Community Fund in December. So there's a lot of great partnerships in this project. The project focuses on best management practices and using innovative approaches to developed in consultation with that technical advisory team of local, state, and tribal partners. The Uplands component includes variable density thinning of trees and planting a diversity of native species, including disease-resistant Port Orford cedar and several culturally important species. The lowlands component uses multiple restoration strategies to reestablish a healthy stream and wetland system while protecting cultural resources and allowing anadromous fish passage. There's also a public trail currently in the project area. It crosses the lowlands, and so we're working on a plan to upgrade the trail and continue access while limiting impacts to the project area. So the estimated project budget for this watershed restoration project is $1.6 million. And SNERR staff are providing approximately $280,000 of in-kind support through their work on this project. And it's estimated to last 3 years. That is the first project. The second project we are requesting approval to apply for is an acquisition project. And it's the map on the right of your slide is showing the location of this project. So this is zooming into the South Slough watershed. That's what the yellow line is. The reserve is shown in gray here, and that bright red box in the lower right is the Winchester tributaries and upland acquisition parcel that we're talking about for this project. So this parcel is 80 acres of forested uplands. It's adjacent to the southeastern boundary of the reserve. The parcel has been considered for inclusion in the reserve since the very beginning when the reserve was established in 1974. It's located in the highest priority area for acquisitions as documented in our management plan. It comprises 2 headwater streams to the South Slough and some of the last remaining mature forests in the watershed, along with the riparian habitat along those streams. The land is owned by the Oregon Department of State Lands as an asset of the Common School Fund, and it's managed by Oregon Department of Forestry for timber production. A timber harvest was originally planned for 2015. However, detections of threatened marbled murrelet on the site in 2014 and 2015 halted those harvest plans. In 2017, so we do have history with this parcel. In 2017, we submitted a proposal to NOAA's Procurement, Acquisition, and Construction Funding Program, or the PAC funding program, to acquire this property. The proposal was highly ranked. It was recommended for funding, but the reserve was unable to come up with the necessary match that we needed to secure the purchase. This opportunity with the IIJA funds is ideal because these funds do not have a non-federal match requirement. So this really provides a great opportunity for us to secure funding to acquire the parcel and to bring it into our reserve. The estimated project budget is at least $1.5 million, although that is based on the budget from the 2017 proposal. And so we will definitely need an appraisal, and we'll include that in the grant proposal when we submit it. We're expecting this to take about 2 years, although we do have up to 3 years to complete these projects. So with that, our recommendation is that the commission authorize reserve staff to submit these 2 proposals to the NOAA for its 2022 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act grant cycle. And again, those 2 projects are the Lawson Creek Watershed Restoration Project and the acquisition of the Winchester Uplands and Tributaries parcel. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bree. Let me start off with a question. Because the land is currently owned by the Department of State Lands, when the purchase is made, that purchase is made to the Department of State Lands. Is that correct?
It is, but it's for the Common School Fund. So those lands go to the Common School Fund to keep that fund whole. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. I just wanted everyone to be clear. I don't have a conflict of interest being the director of the department, but it is land currently owned by the department. And I would indicate that we are well aware this has been on the priority list for the reserve since its inception. So thank you for that. All right, I see Bob Cowan with his hand up.
Yeah, first of all, both of these seem like no-brainers to me. I think that you've outlined them really nicely, and we really should be thinking about this for sure. The only question I have is on the purchase of that property. I guess you said there had been plans to log it. Is there, by demonstrating our intent, is there a way to not have that logged prior to acquisition?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. As I understand it, the land has, the plans for any harvest have kind of been tabled at this point. So it's really just kind of sitting there until, I mean, the surveys that identified the presence of the marbled murrelet are really what held things up. So that is kind of our perfect opportunity.
Let me answer that too, because that's an excellent question. Because the land hasn't been surveyed for the marbled murrelet, we're not logging it currently, and it is not part of our habitat conservation plan work that we're doing right now with the Elliott State Forest. So I can probably assuredly tell you it's just going to sit there and continue to look beautiful until we make the sale happen, if we can make that happen. All right, thank you. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Bree, just one quick question for clarification. So the only match to any of these grants that you'll have would be the $280,000 in-kind contribution, is that correct?
Yes, and there's actually not even a requirement for that. We just estimated the staff time and the commitment over the next 3 years for what that looks like.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? These are great opportunities, Bree. Thank you for your report. Usually Congress comes up with better acronyms. This one's a hard one to remember, IIJA, but we just call it the Infrastructure Act, and that should get us where we need to be. But any other questions before we take a motion on this? All right, I'll take a motion then for the staff recommendation to allow the reserve staff to submit 2 proposals to NOAA for its 2022 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act grant cycle for implementation of the Lawson Creek Watershed Restoration Project and acquisition of the 80-acre Winchester Uplands and Tributaries parcel. Do I have a motion? Bob Cowan, thank you. And Trent is a second. I saw his hand. All right, all those in favor of this motion, or any discussion, I should say, I forgot to ask before, any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Good luck. It's great.
Yeah, this is really awesome. And I was excited to hear, I didn't know we had another SSNERR across the country. So we're gonna have to change all of our literature where we say we're one of 29. That's pretty awesome. Where is it in Connecticut?
Oh, that is a great question. I'm forgetting the name. I'm not familiar.
Maybe Chris knows.
Chris might know.
Yeah, no, my goodness was like, oh goodness, I don't know offhand either, even though I did a little work on it. So
I can see it on a
I'll
map.
put that in the chat in just a minute when I pull it up.
Okay, that'd be great. And our bird is very excited to hear about it. All right, we have one other item under new business, and that's going to be Bree's report about the hunting issue that we talked about last time.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Cowan. Take care. It looks like, yeah, I actually tucked this under other because it's such a short little report. So I have 3 items to discuss or to share with you in the other category. The first is the hunting buffer. And if you'll recall at the December meeting, the commission tasked us to do some outreach and come back to you with a proposal around extending or a hunting proposal, a policy for our hunting, I'm sorry, a proposal for our hunting policy, goodness, that would prohibit hunting within 250 feet of private property, excluding commercial timberlands, as well as we were to look into increasing the current buffer around the hiking trails of the reserve. So we did begin this outreach, but we determined we need some more time to thoroughly research it, especially the conditions around the properties in question. And we also need time to conduct the appropriate GIS analysis, which the need for time has really come about because we currently have a vacant GIS specialist position that we are trying to fill right now. So we're in the middle of a recruitment to fill that position, and we plan to bring a recommendation to the commission for a hunting policy in July. So any questions about that?
I think we're good. Thank you,
Okay.
Bree.
Moving on to the second item. This is related to commercial kayaking in the reserve. So Dave Lacey from South Coast Tours submitted his annual report for commercial kayaking tours that they conducted in 2021 in compliance with their special use permit to operate within the reserve. They conducted 30 tours with 68 passengers. They generated an income, a gross income of $8,680 and a net income of $6,598 after booking fees. So it continues to be a popular trip for South Coast Tours, and they've already submitted a permit application for this year as well.
Bree, yeah, I had to unmute myself. Bree, could you remind us, since we have some new folks here, what the permit fee is for that?
That is a great question. I may ask Rebecca. I think there's a $75 application fee and then a $200 permit fee upon approval.
Correct.
And I guess I'll also add that our administrative rules restrict commercial uses within the reserve. It's really limited to the oyster aquaculture that was in existence prior to the reserve. And this activity that the commission approved a few years ago.
After a great deal of discussion and due diligence, I appreciated the conversation that we had around that.
Yeah.
All right, you had 3 items. That's 2. What else?
Yes, my third item is related to the Deal property. So this property, I provided updates in the past. This is owned by Coos County. It's adjacent to the southern boundary of the reserve. And you may recall it was a segment of the land trade we were working on in 2019 with Coos County that didn't go through. But we still maintain an interest in acquiring this part of it. This parcel is just on the southern boundary of the reserve. At the last meeting, I described that the property, that the Wild Rivers Land Trust had submitted a grant proposal for funding to support the acquisition of the property. At that time, or since that time, it was determined that before a grant proposal could be considered, we really need an appraisal. So we need to determine the purchase price because the estimates we've been working with were all over the map. So Wild Rivers Land Trust and reserve staff are working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to secure funding for an appraisal, hopefully later this year, early next year. That'll give us a much clearer idea of what a grant proposal budget needs to look like. And we've been continuing to update Coos County with this process as we go.
John Sweet is our newest member representing the county commission. Welcome, John. Did you have anything to add about this property?
No, we appreciate the interest. I think this is a nice fit for South Slough. Bree's been very, very patient and kind in working with the county. We don't sell a lot of land, so we're not good at that. We like to acquire it for our forest. But I appreciate the states or the South Slough taking the initiative on getting the appraisal done. I don't think it's, we could have that done ourselves, but you'd still have to have one to match it. So I think this just saves a step, and I think it's the appropriate step to be taken at this time.
Great, thank you, John.
I'd like to add to that I appreciate the county's patience as well, because we do move fairly slowly through our processes. And I just wanted to really call out Lance Morgan, Coos County Forester, for his excellent collaboration, and he's been a great person to work with. So I hope that we both can get this across the finish line.
I have an idea you will.
All right, any other questions of Bree about either one of these 3 issues that she brought forward today? All right, again, thank you, Bree, for your thorough presentations as always. All right, we will move on to the information reports, which is always a lot of fun. I read through these last night, and it's just amazing how much work is going on at the South Slough, the scientific work, the education, all of it is just tremendous. So we will start out, usually we start out with the administration facilities, and that's on Rebecca's shoulders to give us that report.
It is, but you're gonna have to bear with me for just 2 more quick announcements. I just wanted to get it started and call your attention in the administration update to 2 items. The first is the 312 evaluation. So if you'll recall, Section 312 of the Coastal Zone Management Act requires NOAA to periodically evaluate national estuary research reserves that receive funding through their program. Our evaluation is scheduled for April 12th through April 19th, and that's Tuesday through Tuesday. I know that sounds weird, but we have staff that work Tuesday through Saturday, so that time schedule fits everybody. Our evaluation will focus on the reserve's work since October 2015 related to climate resilience. And so staff are putting together a really exciting agenda for that week. That includes focus sessions with stakeholders and partners related to 4 topics. One is training the next generation of climate scientists, stewards, and educators. Another is boosting resilience in coastal communities through education and outreach. The third one is engaging with tribal nations for a resilient future. And the 4th one is leveraging partnerships for resilience. The evaluation week also includes a public meeting. So NOAA will be conducting a public meeting to get input from the community on the reserve, on how we operate, as well as any comments people want to share about ways we could improve or opportunities we should be pursuing. So I know staff may have reached out to some of you as commissioners as well to participate in these sessions. So I just wanted to call note to that and thank you for any involvement that you provide. The second item just to call your attention to is the management plan update. We are continuing to make progress on our strategic plan. This is really the backbone of our management plan that describes the overarching priorities and goals and the objectives that we'll focus on for the next 5 years. We've determined that the 3 priorities in our existing plan are still very relevant. So that's climate change, habitat protection, and invasive species. And we are keeping those priorities and just updating goals, objectives, and actions under each of those. So I plan to share a revised strategic plan with the commission in July, as well as these other items we've been discussing. And I'll provide regular updates on the plan in subsequent meetings and opportunities. I'll highlight opportunities for the commission's input. But if you have any questions or would like to learn more, feel free to reach out to me. And that, I just wanted to highlight those 2 items, and I will pass it on to Rebecca.
Oh,
so you are done with me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And, I read through the 312 evaluation. That's pretty comprehensive. I appreciate that NOAA is wanting to ensure that the NERRs are doing what they're expected to do, and that they do this very comprehensive evaluation that includes our stakeholders and community partners. And that the focus is looking at climate resilience, as we know is a particular issue on the coast and all across the country, actually. As I was saying before we started today, I'm in Alexandria, Virginia, and this weekend we had what they call a bomb cyclone, where we ended up with 2 inches of snow. Then Monday, it became sunny, and Tuesday it was sunny, and Wednesday was okay, and today it's pouring down rain. So it's climate change is here. So anyway, I appreciate that, Bree. And those are all the strategic plan. As you, many of you know, also the department itself, the Department of State Lands, is going through its strategic planning process also. So the South Slough strategic plan will be an important part of that. So thank you. Rebecca, you want to talk about facilities?
I do. And most of my updates are in your packets. And they start on page 17, it looks like. The 2 things that I really wanted to highlight today are day-to-day issues that we have, more management and access issues with the reserve and our location out off of Seven Devils. So as you know, our visitor center, as well as our maintenance facility, they're very rural. They're out there on Seven Devils. And we have a lot of private lands that back up to the reserve boundaries out there. And for the most part, our neighbors are very good neighbors, but every once in a while we have those few neighbors that we struggle with. And one of the main issues that I wanted to bring up today, more as an FYI, and what some of the access issues and management issues we have with the reserve on a regular basis. And most might not know it, but our facility staff do routine patrols. They're out on the land. They're out there dealing with these issues daily, sometimes hourly. And it really takes up a lot of their time. So one of the main issues that I wanted to bring up, and this is something we've been dealing with since early 2021. So there's a piece of property, it's a private piece of property that is on Seven Devils. The property address is 61807 Seven Devils Road. And this is the owner, his last name is Daly. And he actually does not live on the land. He owns the land and he lives in Idaho. He has a mailing address in Bandon area is the only contact information we have for him. So this house was abandoned for years. We actually way back, I believe it was around 2007-ish, had the opportunity to purchase this piece of property, and we put in a bid at the same time that we purchased a piece of property that was right beside it. And the bid for this particular property was denied. And so Mr. Daly purchased it. And currently he has some occupants that are staying in the property that are not friendly to South Slough. So some of the issues we've been having with this, the occupants that are currently on this property, is they have built rough living quarters on our lands, like shelters made out of plywood and tents and tarps and things like that. They dump their garbage there. We found them cutting our trees, multiple trees, and not just small brush type trees. These are pretty good, size stumps of cedars and whatnot. They burn trash and plastic on a regular basis. From as far as we know, this house does not have a usable septic system or running water that we know of. So they are contaminating the ground where they're at. They also tend to use generators for their power. So one of the things that our facility staff have found is rough, and this is maybe not the way to explain this, but rough holes dug into the ground, and the generators are put into the hold and then a piece of plywood over it to protect it from the elements. So in normal times, you wouldn't think that was any big deal, but during fire season, that is a huge deal for us because there's exhaust and heat that comes off of those generators. As you can tell, in our fire season, it's very dry out there and we're in the middle of a forest. So we always have concerns about fire season. We have been working with Oregon State Police on this issue, as well as our local sheriff's department. So when we see an issue, we call, we have them come out. We've actually sent 2 different letters to the owner of the property. The first time he responded to me off of that letter and was very apologetic. He did not know he had people living on his property. And he went on to explain that he would go through the process of a civil eviction to have them removed from the property. This was back in June of 2021. I sent another letter to him in August of 2021 asking him for an update as well as more updated contact information for him, maybe a phone number and email other than a mailing address in Bandon, which has to be forwarded out to him in Idaho and things like that. So it takes a long time to get in contact with him. He did not respond to that second letter, and I have not heard from him since then. We plan on sending out a third letter to him within the next week or so, again, asking for a response and an update on his civil eviction proceedings. I'm hoping, as well as Bree, we're hoping he's telling us the truth that he's going through those process, but we don't know. We don't have any documentation if he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. So during the time that we've been going through this process, there's been a couple other issues that have come up with that particular property. So in June of 2021, we actually had OSP officers come out, and we, as in Bree, myself, as well as my 2 facilities staff, Mike Allman, as well as Jonathan Forth, who are our boots on the ground when it comes to our facilities issues. We all did a walkthrough on the piece of property beside where these people are living in Mr. Daly's property. And we found the rough camp spots that they've created, you know, the brush and trees and whatnot that they've been damaging. And so they made several suggestions to us on how this was to put a cable gate up on a piece of property we have right adjacent to it, where it kind of has a rough driveway that goes into an old property or an old pole barn type shed that we had torn down several years ago. So we cable gated that, as well as we put signs up around that area notifying that it was trespassing and that area was closed to the public. And that was based off of OSP's recommendations. They also asked us to start documenting all of the issues. So we've been doing that. We also noticed another thing that came up last month, actually, in February. My facility staff, they were out and about in that area, and they noticed that there were several trees cut on our property. And these were very large cedar trees. You know, not small twigs or young trees. These were trees with a stump, you know, a 1 to 1.5 foot stump, maybe larger. And as they were noticing this area that they were cutting the trees at, Mike, who's on the call today, he noticed that there was some cut logs on this property of Mr. Daly's. So he actually contacted the Coos County Sheriffs. He dealt with a Deputy Boswell on this situation, and they responded, and a gentleman that is staying on that property admitted to the Coos County Sheriffs that yes, he did indeed cut those trees. Bree worked with Mike on this situation because I was out of the office that day, and we contacted Vicky and got approval to press charges on this current situation. I've left a couple different calls to Deputy Boswell to see if I can get an update and see if that process is going through. But I have not received a call back from Deputy Boswell. He's a busy man. But these are some of the issues that we deal with regards to our facilities and our public access on a regular basis. One of the other things that Mike and Jonathan deal with on a regular basis, especially in the Hinch Road area, because it is, off the beaten path. It's not on a main road. And it's easy access for someone to dump garbage. So I would probably say multiple times a week that daily they do rounds in that area, driving down the roads, checking out, see if there's, any campers, gates are locked, things like that. And I would probably say 2 to 3 times a week, they have piles of garbage that are dumped in those locations off the beaten path, like I said. Some of the dumps have, drug paraphernalia, needles, it is not good garbage, if there is anything like good garbage. But these are things that we deal with on a daily basis, dumping of tires. There was one section on one of our gates just off of Seven Devils a couple weeks ago where it looked like there was about 10 to 15 tires and wheels that were dumped at our gate. These are all things that we deal with on a daily basis, and we don't leave. Our staff picks them up, and then we have to pay to dispose of them. So other than staff time, it is costing us money out of our budget to pay for these public dumping situations where we don't want our lands to look like a garbage dump, so we pick it up right away. A good example is last week, I believe it was, Eric was down in the Hinch Road area with a college group for education program. And the night before, Mike and Jonathan, they did their rounds. There was no dumps. Overnight, someone dumped 2 big piles of garbage down Hinch Road. And unfortunately, Eric has a big college group. He goes down, and guess what? There's piles of garbage on the side of the road. So this is something we're trying to figure out how to manage. We're unsure how to do it other than just keeping on our daily patrols, morning and evening, or when they start their shift, before they end their shift, and then picking it up as we go. So it's a regular thing that we have to deal with when it comes to facilities. The other thing that we deal with on a regular basis is campers. So based on our OARs, camping is not allowed on reserve lands. And every once in a while in the Hinch Road area, we find campers. Normally they move on fairly quickly after, Mike and Jonathan, they give them a copy of our OARs and say, camping is not allowed, and they move on. Most recently, I believe it was January into February, we had a group that camped off of Indian Point. Indian Point is not on the Seven Devils side of the reserve, but it's more on the Jonay side of the reserve. And they were actually camped right on the beach. We dealt with them many times, asking them to leave. We had OSP come out as well as the sheriffs and notify them they did need to move. They needed to leave. It was illegal. Finally, we got a report that they did finally move on, but it was a lot of staff time trying to manage it. Campers normally leave garbage. So it's just something that we deal with on a regular basis. And that's kind of why I'm bringing this up, is just more as an FYI. These are facility and access issues that we deal with on a regular basis. That is my extent of my report. Probably way too much information, but that is what we have to deal with.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. And I remember we've had some conversation about perhaps video cameras down around the Hinch Road area where people are dumping, so that we could actually see a license plate and file a complaint in that way. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we have put out cameras we've had cameras stolen, but we have them out currently. We've tried to hide it in a location where they can't easily see it, so they don't take it. It helps us identify somewhat of the vehicle. We've reported those vehicles. For example, there was one that we got really good on the camera, had some good pictures. We reported it to the sheriffs. They actually brought down an old dilapidated travel trailer and dumped it on land on Hinch Road. And we were able to get a good picture, turned it into the sheriffs. I'm not sure if they ended up finding it, but the county did come and tow away the trailer. So it's no longer there. But we can only identify so much of vehicles, and sometimes just based on the speed that they're going by or whatnot, we might not get a full license plate. But yes, that we do have one on the Hinch Road, and we have gotten some information off of it to be able to turn into the authorities.
All right. And any questions or comments? It sounds like it's been a frustrating experience, and it sounds like, Mike, you're out there a lot, being our local sheriff until the real sheriff gets there. But you know, I appreciate that work. I don't know how else we're going to be dealing with it. Just constantly patrolling.
Yep.
And it's a rural area, and that's what you're going to see. People don't want to pay the garbage fees.
And unfortunately, we have seen an increase over the last couple of years due to COVID and whatnot. I think it's just increasing.
Right. Rebecca, is something less toxic is the I read about the pole barn, and you know, we've all been hearing about the cost of construction on that. I found it interesting that now we have come to the decision to buy a pole barn kit and have it delivered raising party. Uh-oh, did I get muted? Did I?
You're not muted, but
freeze?
you're cutting in and out.
I did. Okay, all right, I took myself off video. The pole barn kit, it's going to be delivered to the property. Are we going to have a pole barn raising?
Possibly. We're going to look at, you know, the funny thing about this whole project is when you try and get the materials and the labor all in one big package, it's a lot more expensive. And that's what we found through the RFQs and process that we've went through on contracting. We've actually got some tentative labor quotes from a local company that would just come out and put it up. And they are much more affordable compared to, you know, the materials and hiring a contractor and everything all in one. So we're going to try that first. And the potential is for that to be up this summer. If that quote doesn't come back favorable, then we will look at a good old fashioned barn raising event. We'll provide the food, you bring the labor. It's been a very frustrating project, let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been done that way before if you get enough volunteers. So,
Yep.
All right, well, we'll stay tuned and see what comes of that. All right, well, thank you, Rebecca. Does that conclude your report?
It does.
All right, we'll move
Thank
on
you.
to education. Jamie had to leave, so who is going to give this report?
I can give it unless, Eric, you want to give it.
No, go for
Okay,
Not
maybe you
it.
can chime in if I miss anything. Jamie left some notes for me, and she said that the hiring for the seasonal education specialist is in process. They haven't been able to hire anyone just yet, so that's still in process. They've selected a design company for the exhibit hall updates and renovations that are funded by the PAC Award. So that's very exciting. The Estuary Explorers After School program started for 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th grade students at Millicoma School in February. And the last day, the first session ends today. That's where Jamie had to go to. And Sophie, our AmeriCorps intern, recruited 4 high school students to intern from North Bend High School, and they've been assisting with the program, and I've witnessed firsthand they're doing a great job. The education staff are also offering 2 days of spring break activities next week. So there'll be a 3rd and 4th grade and a 5th and 6th grade one-day camp. And we're just transitioning back towards a more normal spring program season with school groups, events, and public programs, which is kind of a breath of fresh air for all of us. And Eric can probably answer questions about the hiring and the staffing. I might be able to answer about the AmeriCorps if anybody has any questions about that. And then Eric, did you want to add anything?
Let me sorry, no, that sounds really good. But if there are questions about upcoming events and stuff like that, let me know.
All right, thank you. And it is nice to return to normal education experiences. I know you all have struggled. You've risen to the occasion, but there's nothing better than having a full group of school kids to laugh and run around and learn about the estuary. So that's great. Thank you for hanging in there. All right, coastal training. That would be Sabra.
Hi. So I'm going to be talking about a workshop that was not on the briefing packet because it was scheduled or came together a little last minute, but led by Alice Yates. There was a group of practitioners that first virtually attended a webinar and then came for a site visit around Port Orford cedar restoration, specifically around a particular type of pathogen that causes root rot, and there's been some populations of Port Orford cedar that have a genetic resistance to it. This, of course, is of interest to a lot of other folks. Oh, Alice, you're on the call. Do you want to talk about that since you led it?
Sure. So we had a group from BLM that was interested in finding out what the reserve was doing in terms of Port Orford cedar research and trials and the genetic resistance to the Phytophthora lateralis. And that developed into bringing the original technical team into the reserve from the genetics lab that had originally established the trials in the reserve. So we ended up doing a site visit with a whole bunch of different partners, including people that were involved in that original research, people from BLM, people from the tribes, Kaquel Indian tribe and the Confederated Tribes of the Kuzla, Amka and Sayuslo Indians both attended, as well as some other folks, foresters and people that were interested in learning more about this. And so it's a really exciting time because there's actually opportunity for land managers to get this root rot resistant varieties out onto the landscape, and they're available. And this is sort of a maybe the first in the world potentially of being able to bring in naturally resistant tree species to these invasive pathogens and being able to repopulate the landscape. So the workshop was really well attended. We had around 30 people attend. There's a lot of discussion and follow up and ideas of continuing collaborations with the reserve. And this is something that we're looking to put on in the Lawson Watershed Restoration Project.
And as part of the post-program evaluation, there were a couple questions asked around what the interest was of making this an annual or repeat program, as well as if people were interested in trainings or workshops on related subjects. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive and yes. So this is definitely generated a lot of interest with folks. There's a couple of other workshops that are upcoming, if not yet happened, one of which is a follow-up offering of the Pacific Marine Estuarine and Fish Partnership, PMEP. They're doing a digital walkthrough of their Estuary Mapper and Estuary Explorer online tools, which, in addition to being very robust tools within themselves, also have the ability to, you can put your specific information into the tools and you utilize them on an individual basis. So there was a workshop done in November that was, it sold out very quickly. So a repeat of the workshop is being done at the beginning of April. And that one will hopefully be a big success. The next one is a juvenile lamprey identification workshop. The two primary partners for that are the Coquille Indian tribe as well as Oregon Fish and Wildlife. This was budgeted for and planned for early 2020, I believe, but because of the nature of the workshop, the hands-on component, it was put off until the restrictions were lifted on in-person gatherings, and it was especially because the main audience is prioritized towards tribal biologists from around the state. They wanted to hold it off until it was safer to do so. So that's planned for around the last week of May. We're still getting down the exact date, but planning is rolling forward on that. So there will be a one-day program. The AM will be a classroom lecture style, going over lamprey biology, focusing on juveniles. And then the PM section will be identifying physical specimens, hopefully a combination of preserved and fresh gathered specimens. And then the last one that's coming up is Fire and Defensible Space. This is one of two that is going to be, the first portion is going to be virtual and is going to be talking about different land management as well as land management techniques to create defensible space, as well as the climate and other factors that contribute to fire danger and fire prevalence, specifically within the Western coast. The SSNERR Science Collaborative regarding social and ecometrics around marsh restoration, that did focus groups, held focus groups at South Slough last fall. That section of the project is wrapping up. There's several products that are being produced and edited right now. Several of them are going to be a great help with messaging around marsh restoration, especially to diverse audiences. And then the next follow-up to this project, another SSNERR's collaborative project, the pre-proposal was approved and has been invited to make a full proposal. That one, if funded, would start at the beginning of 2022. And the main expansion from that is using a lot of similar techniques to incorporate reserves in California and Washington. And again, just making those communication products at the end usable for a wider audience. And then finally, The NARS working group, the Indigenous Knowledge Working Group, has convened and is going through reviews of several different types of documentation and partner organizations, just giving advice and SME knowledge, or sorry, subject matter expert input into how to better either partner with tribes or how to better incorporate Indigenous communities' needs and tribal nation structures into making it easier to partner with Indigenous nations or Indigenous tribes and Indigenous communities. So they've met with the NAIR Science Collaborative Group, and that was a very productive discussion as well. And then they put together a feedback document on the management plan guidance. So they're working their way through different guidance and partner organizations. And that's it for my report.
All right, thank you, Sabra. I appreciate the time and effort you put into that. Unless there's any questions, we'll move on to our Science and Stewardship Program update. Is Sean going to kick that off for us?
No, I'm going to give the science update. This is Allie.
Oh, hi, Allie. Great. Okay, I've got to get myself off camera because it keeps interfering with my internet here. Okay.
Can you all see my screen that I'm sharing?
Can.
Okay. So, yep, I was going to give an update on things in the eelgrass world. We've had several graduate students finish their projects, and so I thought it'd be a good time to update you guys what's been going on around our eelgrass habitat declines.
Hey, Allie, we lost your slide view. We're seeing part of the frame.
Weird. Hold on.
It's not in presentation mode.
Okay. Sorry, it's just at the very bottom, so I can't see it. Is that working now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay, so this first slide is just a reminder of the drastic declines in the die-offs that we experienced in South Slough that started in 2015 and 2016. This happened at all of our long-term monitoring sites, from the marine end all the way to the upper estuary. So it was across the entire salinity gradient. So we worked with 3 graduate students to understand what drivers might be contributing to our eelgrass loss. All 3 of these students used different modeling approaches, but they used the same eelgrass and water quality data sets from the reserve. Okay, so first, Caitlin Moggle, she dedicated a chapter of her thesis to understanding eelgrass declines with an ecological environmental modeling approach. And she found that eelgrass declines were likely caused by temperature stress from both increased water and air temperature, which is important for intertidal eelgrass, light limitation, and increases in turbidity. The second project was completed by Maria Jose Marin, who's a student of Dave Sutherland's, working on the hydrodynamic model. So she approached this as an oceanographer. She found marine heat waves from the blob, which was the warm circular blob of water that was observed off the coast of the Pacific Ocean beginning in 2014 that lasted through 2016. So she found those marine heat waves were increasing estuary water temperature. And that was also coupled with low river discharge. So those same years, we had much lower precipitation. And so that warm water hung out in the South Slough longer than it normally would have because it wasn't getting flushed out. So that created longer residence time for that water. The last project was completed by Winnie Wang, who was a microbiologist at Oregon State University. She used an eelgrass species distribution model called Maxent. So she used spatial imagery, maps, and found elevation was the strongest factor determining where eelgrass was present. She also found water temperature and chlorophyll A to be important secondary factors. So the common driver through all of these projects has been increasing water temperatures from marine heat waves, along with other secondary factors like turbidity and chlorophyll. Okay. So we had other graduate students and undergraduate interns that help us document the declines and causes. So the top part of this graph is showing images from Riley Anderson's thesis. She used drone imagery and documented the losses in Bellino from 2016 to 2019. So she found a 50% loss in eelgrass cover. And you can see these beautiful images that she has created. We also had interns from the Research Experience for Undergraduates program. Both Karina and Reagan worked on the eelgrass projects. And Karina found that the eelgrass declines were localized to South Slough and that they were not occurring in the lower parts of the Coos estuary. And Reagan characterized sediments of eelgrass. So we proceeded with a restoration path slowly, mainly because our advisory committee recommended understanding the drivers of declines before beginning any large-scale restoration work. There's also a high failure rate among global seagrass restoration projects. Usually about 30% of projects are successful. However, during COVID, we did start a restoration experiment in July 2020 to do some experimental testing with elevation and season. So we took eelgrass from Clam Island and we planted it at Bellino at 3 different elevations and in 4 different seasons. And after a year and a half, we see that elevation is a key factor. Our deep elevation plots, which are at the subtidal intertidal edge, are maintaining the original planting densities. The low elevation plots are about half the planting density. And our highest elevation plots, which are called mid, have very low to 0 density. And we're continuing to monitor that quarterly. And then I wanted to end with some recent observations and potential evidence of natural recovery. So our marine eelgrass site, Culver Point, has been increasing in cover from both our transect surveys from 2019 to 2022. And then Riley's thesis, she also did drone imagery at Culver, and she documented a 30% increase in eelgrass cover over the 3-year period, which corroborated what we were seeing along our transects and plot surveys. And then last week, I was out collecting sediment cores with one of our project collaborators on the hydro model project. And we saw a patch of eelgrass at the upper estuary just downstream from Hinch Bridge. And eelgrass has been absent at the upper estuary at both Hidden and Danger, 2 of the sites that we monitor since 2018. So this is some little glimmer of hope that we're seeing some natural recovery in our eelgrass habitat. And that's all I have.
Wow, that was a great report, Allie. I was excited to hear that the deep elevation plots are doing well after a year. That shows tremendous promise. And to get all these graduate students to come in and help with these experiments must be great. That's terrific. All right, well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Allie about this great work? All right, who is going next?
I think we have Alice. Did you have a stewardship info update?
Yep. I'll just keep it quick and can ask questions at the end if needed. So Bree mentioned that we received the funding from the US Fish and Wildlife Service through the Coos, the Friends of South Slough Board, and also the Kaquel Indian Tribal funds through the Coos Watershed Association to start working in the Lawson Valley. Just wanted to let folks note that we're planning on starting that forest work in April, May, so next couple of months, and we held a public information session about this last night. We only had 4 members of the public turn up to it, but there wasn't any concerns raised over the project, and that session has recorded and Deborah has listed it up on our YouTube site. So hopefully we can reach a greater audience, and a number of people have expressed interest in having that recording. And as Bree mentioned, for the Lawson project, the other big thing is having that infrastructure funding round coming through and getting a letter of intent into that and hopefully a grant submission in. So that's kind of what's happening with Lawson at the moment. In terms of invasive species in the reserve, we've started up the second Saturday Stewards program again. This started just prior to the pandemic and then was put on hold until we could figure things out. And then in February this year, we started again and we've run 2 public programs. The intent of this program is to have a regular stewardship activity once a month on the second Saturday from 10 to 12. The first month we pulled Biddy Biddy, which is a small ground cover plant that had the potential of spreading into the areas that we're managing as part of our Lawson Forest Enhancement Project. And so we had some great volunteers come out or participants and pull that plant so that it doesn't spread. And then the last month we had people working in and around the visitor center, getting it ready for opening up, which we're all excited about. The only other notice that I wanted to bring to the Commission's attention is that we have been working on a fire analysis management and response plan. It's not quite ready for sharing with the Commission at this stage. It's under review by staff as well as fire and resource management experts and the Confederated Tribes of the Kuzlaw, Umpqua and Sayusla Indians and the Coquel Indian Tribe are also have copies to look at the moment. It outlines, among other things, some objectives around fire in the reserve and our management goals, which at this stage, and as I said, this is a draft, looking at building understanding of and capacity for ecological forest management in the South Sioux Reserve and along the Oregon coast. Another objective is improve ecosystem and cultural resource health in the South Sioux Reserve. The third is protecting people, infrastructure, sensitive habitats and cultural resources during wildfires. And the fourth is managing a burnt landscape, so after a high severity fire. So after this has been reviewed by experts and staff, we will be bringing this to the Commission down the track. It also has a lot of information on practical information for the reserve on how we respond to a wildfire. And then just similarly on that note, thinking about protecting and restoring culturally significant species. We have ongoing support from our local tribal nations, specifically around planting and managing culturally important species. So some of the discussions that we had as we're developing this fire plan was with the tribes about the idea of bringing cultural burning into the reserve. And this is very early stages of discussion. There would be a lot of planning, a lot of consultation, a lot of development around this idea before anything is to happen. But there was definitely interest in having training opportunities for tribal members and for the reserve and thinking about this as a potential of moving forward with managing our habitat here. That was all that I wanted to say, unless there's specific questions around stewardship.
That was a great report, Alice. I really enjoyed it. Does anyone else have any questions? I appreciate the tribal engagement that continues here in every facet of what we do here at the South Slough, and particularly on these forestry issues in the fire response plan. That's great. Thank you, Alice.
Thanks a lot.
All right, who else would like to give us a science report today? Is that it for us, Bree, with the science report?
Yeah, I think Sean had passed it to Allie for her presentation.
Okay.
He's nodding, so I see that as a yes. So last up is just a report from the Friends of South Slough.
Okay, great. So is that Christine or Todd or both of you?
That would be Christine.
Okay.
Well, we have a written report for you that details sort of the major accomplishments, trying to leverage the final land acquisitions that Bree covered, and that is going to be to everyone's delight to improve the entrance, certainly to the reserve. And and then our other engagement is to try to still continue to provide an appropriate way to boost the financial capacity of the reserve activities. We've been working to try to streamline some of those things and in a strategic planning and reorganization of how we can support the activities at the reserve, but also be considered as a separate entity, because we are an NGO and able to provide support within any kind of commentary and things that the reserve cannot do. So that's, it's written, and I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but that's kind of the state of what we're doing. And we are anxious that perhaps we can meet together and have activities together again. We're hopeful anyway. So that's the end of my report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Christine. Your contribution to the South Slough is just tremendous, and your leadership, you and Todd with FOSS, has been tremendous, and we're so pleased and very excited. And I have to tell you, I think that next time we meet in July, since we will meet in person, I think we should have a little reception afterwards to just see each other and enjoy our company. I've enjoyed seeing you on the screen, but it's not the same. So it would be nice to plan a little bit of an event right after that, Bree, just putting that in your ear. All right, any questions the commission has? You've been a little quiet today. The bird's been making up for that. But I think there's been some continuing great work here at the South Slough. We at the department are getting ready for our budget for 23-25. I'm getting ready to submit that in the next couple months. So we're doing a lot of budget work, which includes the budget for the South Slough. So when we get ready to go into the next session in February of next year, we'll be asking for letters of support and such. But I think we're in great shape. We have a lot of supporters in the legislature, but I was just reading an article yesterday that there's about half, a little over half of the, not quite half, but almost half of the members of the House are up for, have quit and retired. So we're going to get all new people, and that means that we need to do a lot of education about what the South Slough is. So we're on it. Malia Masiba is our fantastic ledge coordinator, and we'll get everyone up to speed before the session. Once the dust settles on the election and we know who our next governor is, we'll have an idea where we're going to go from there. Other than that, I think that concludes the work we had today. Bree, we have our next scheduled meeting as Thursday, July 21 at 1 p.m. That's great. I'll get that in my calendar. And does anyone have any comments for the good of the order before I take a motion to adjourn? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn. That motion is not debatable once it's seconded. So who would like to do that? John, you're smiling. Why don't you give us a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All right, I'll take a second.
Second.
Maya and someone else seconded it as well. That's great. All right, it's been fabulous to see you. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes and we will see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
Vicki.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take care,
all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.